over the last I'd say a week, maybe 2 weeks, there's just been this, I don't know quite how to explain it, but there's been this sort of percolating, roiling sort of anger. And I think over the last few days in particular, I've been trying to figure out where that's coming from, where that's stemming from. Because ideally, when you have an abundance of negative emotions in you, not that I think anger is necessarily or inherently a negative emotion. I think negativity, and every emotion has its place. You know, if my academic background has taught me anything, it's that every emotion has a legitimate and justifiable place on the spectrum of emotions. Anger in particular, I've always found for myself, has been one of the best and most motivating emotions. And you definitely, once you realize let's just say you're naturally a happy person, or you're naturally a sad person, a melancholic person, something like that, once you sort of realize your inherent sort of emotional state, I think you can use that to fuel what you do. Like, I could imagine there being a score of poets out there that have a natural propensity towards sadness or melancholy, and they lean into that and it fuels them. It's not this inherently negative thing. Anger is a lot like that, except that anger is one of the more destructive emotions. Anger, when not utilized correctly, is obviously one of the most negative emotions, but it's just a matter of how you take that anger. So I've always used anger and rage as fuel for creativity. You'll have to ignore the truck behind me. But anger in particular, I've always felt a little more comfortable around it or with it. Now, I'm not a violent person by nature. I'm much more measured and cerebral in how I approach things. At least that's how I would sort of, if I had to examine myself and lay at my own feet, my sort of state. And maybe that's hereditary, maybe it's genetic, maybe it's epigenetic. You know, there are a variety of factors, and I suppose in like layman's terms, it all comes down to, is it nature or nurture? You know, my father, who was one of my best friends, I would say he was naturally an angry person, but he never really took it out on, you know, myself, my family, anything like that. But, you know, the political situation, he used that made him angry. Things like that. And I don't necessarily believe that any emotion is necessarily a negative one. And we live in a time frame right now where I would say masculinity in particular is under attack, but it's broader than that. It's sort of like any negative emotion is under attack. It sort of reminds me a little bit of Orwell's 1984 with like Ingsoc and the doublespeak, and you're not allowed to be sad or angry, especially in my observations as a man. These are emotions that you've got to avoid, and all you've got to do is look online and see the commentary and criticism around anger in particular, and you'll notice that we're trying to stamp anger out unless it's directed at a very specific set of people. Like, it's socially acceptable to be angry towards Elon Musk or Donald Trump, for instance. But if you're angry towards anything else, like let's just say an example, and this is purely an example, you're somebody that's unhappy with how many people are being let into your own country, legally or illegally. If you're angry about that, it's considered socially unacceptable. You've got to, examine that and try and work through it. But I think that's a little disingenuous. If you're somebody and that anger is genuine and it's not overdone, you're not somebody that just leans into your anger so much that you're just this rage monster, like a human, like a real life Hulk, for example. I think so long as that anger is healthy and you're channeling it in healthy ways, yeah, I'm really cautious about where the world's heading, the Western world in particular, regarding where we direct our anger. I think all anger is healthy when it's aimed correctly, or at least when you're processing it in, not a negative way, like you're not lashing out at people violently. And yeah, I would be cautious and wary of anybody that's criticizing you, openly criticizing you, just simply for feeling anger, because anger isn't necessarily a negative emotion. Anyways, I just thought I would share some thoughts on that. Let me know in the comments below what you have to say about this one. And yeah, until the next one, I'll catch you guys around.